All right, everybody. Welcome to our budget meeting tonight. It's June 1st. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 5 o'clock p.m. Establish quorum. Tonight we have Carlin Fryer, Sarah Falkenberry, Christy Schmidt, Dallas Pipes, Rich Senna, myself, Courtney Darter Bruce. The first item on the agenda is visitor comments. We don't have anyone signed up to speak tonight, so we'll go to letter B, which is discussion of resolution for voluntary background checks for board trustees and candidates. So Dr. Kraft, would you like to speak to this?
Sure, thank you. Welcome back, everybody, to our workshop for our budget. And anytime we have a workshop, we have an opportunity to bring a few other topics. So we're going to start with a few topics tonight before we get into the workshop. And I provided each of you on a piece of blue paper the backup that was provided in the board agenda. And it's something that a number of y'all have been talking about. Rich worked on this, and so I'll turn it over to our trustees for discussion on the concept of voluntary background checks.
Should we read it? Why don't we read it? Courtney, why don't you start reading it? We'll just go around the room.
All right, I'm going to start with the title and everything just to get our framework here. Bernie Independent School District Resolution of the Board of Trustees for voluntary background checks for board trustees and candidates. Whereas the Bernie ISD Board of Trustees approves and commits to each year a code of ethics. Whereas that code includes trustworthiness and stewardship, honor and conduct, integrity of character, commitment to service, and a student-centered focus.
Whereas adhering to this code of ethics is essential for the successful oversight of Bernie ISD, whereas trustees are expected to lead by example in adhering to a code of ethics that promotes honesty, integrity, and financial responsibility, whereas teacher and staff applicants are required to undergo a background check prior to being offered employment, whereas volunteers are required to undergo the same background check prior to being able to interact in our schools.
Whereas on June 21st, 2025, Governor Abbott signed SB 271 that establishes comprehensive framework aimed at enhancing the process for reporting and investigating misconduct involving educators and service providers in education settings as part of an ongoing effort to improve child safety and accountability within Texas schools.
Hereby be it resolved that the Bernie ISD Board of Trustees encourages all candidates seeking election to the Bernie ISD Board of Trustees, as well as current trustees, to undergo the same background check that all applicants seeking employment must undergo, and that this background check includes any examples of an applicant's criminal background or financial mismanagement.
Yeah, just some background on this. This is an issue that's been percolating for a while in my mind that, we ask our teachers and staff members to go through a background check where their fingerprint is sent through a system. And Rick was explaining to me all that is involved. There was an article recently in a publication about the thousands of Texas educators flagged for crimes a new Texas Education Agency tool shows. And I reached out to the mayor of Fair Oaks Ranch, and Mayor Maxton sent me a copy of their home rule charter, and included in there indicates a line about how you could be forfeiting your office by failing to maintain at any time during your term qualification for the office prescribed by the charter, and if convicted of a misdemeanor involving moral turpitude, a violation of any state laws regulating conflict of interest, a felony, or is assessed or deferred adjudication or probation for felony, or any state laws regulating conflict of interest, you'd have to forfeit your position. So it seems that Fair Oaks Ranch has something in store to have accountability. We have accountability for our teachers and our staff members and our volunteers, yet we have no accountability for people seeking to be trustees of the largest taxing entity in the county, and that just makes no sense to me. Now, we could make this voluntary, we could make it mandatory. The only reason I put voluntary in was, I mean, I spoke to TASB's attorney, and they had never heard of this. And I'm like, what do you mean? I was shocked that they never heard of anything like that. And they're like, well, it's not enforceable. Whatever. I mean, what's right is right and what's wrong is wrong. And voters should know who is seeking office. And no one's talking about things that go back 30 years or whatever when they were in high school, but it's any event. So I put this together because we have our code of ethics that we sign. We'll sign at our June meeting, and we've been doing that for years. And we uphold that. But what about candidates who seek to join this board? What about them? Do they? So that's kind of the background on this and how it came about.
So when you say not going back, so when you say not going back 30 years, is there? I mean, I have no problem with if you want to go back to my birth, we're good. But what do we want to go back? I mean, do we want to put some verbiage in there? You know, as far as like 3 term limits or 9 years or 10. You know, I don't know what that would look like.
Well, I mean, I don't. This is where I'm a little bit ignorant on background checks, and I would need to get more educated. But to me, I certainly would want to know something of a criminal nature in the past, as well as past or present financial mismanagement, because we're asked to vote on tax issues, budget issues, and is somebody being fiscally responsible in their lives? And I think that's a very relevant thing. Now, if somebody filed bankruptcy 17 years ago and now they are clear and above, well, that can be explained. We have an elected official in Kendall County that went through bankruptcy many, many years ago, but is on the straight and narrow and is fine, has been reelected 3 times. So, you know, I just think we need to use good judgment.
I'll just add, I mean, most of us are mentor teachers, and we have background checks done through that route. I do say whereas teacher and staff applicants are required to undergo a background check, and then whereas volunteers are required to undergo the same background check. And as far as I know, those are 2 different levels of background checks. So it's not necessarily the same as what the staff isn't necessarily the same as what the volunteers are getting. I don't know if Jill, you want to speak to that, or if there's, you know, is there anyone who's not a mentor teacher on? So is it the same? Like, what's the difference?
Krista may be able to speak to it. Typically, all of our volunteers go through the Raptor check, and I know that Stephanie Batista manages that.
And the volunteers who are going to be serving on campus, for example, as mentors, they do a background check. It's not the same as the staff in that they don't do the fingerprinting, but they do a more extensive background check where we check their history. And it's different than if just somebody's visiting the campus. So there's essentially 3 different levels. The Raptor, just checking their driver's license as they come in and out. The volunteer, which is a little bit more extensive background check. And then the staff, which is fingerprinting.
Yeah, the one thing just to remember on the fingerprinting piece, if we do that, if something comes out of that, we are not at liberty to share that information. That is confidential information, and we would know, but we could not share that.
And what is the cost for an employee, for anyone?
For anybody, when you have to be CJIS authorized to be able to even view that information. So I know, like myself, Nadine, Rick, and Mike Davis, they can see it, but we can't share it. It's not, even if somebody, like for instance, if we do a background check on an employee and they get what's called a hit on their background check, we can't even tell that employee what came up. They have to go request a copy of that. We're not allowed to disclose that information.
And are there different costs associated with each of the 3 levels?
So for the fingerprinting, I believe is $50, $51, $55, somewhere around there. The other background check, it's just a name-based search, and so there's no cost associated with it. But it does not give financial information. It only gives criminal type information.
So I'm just trying to run this down. So say I'm the one getting, you know, something comes up in my background. There's embezzlement 6 years ago. if no one can know about it, and I'm just, you know, I'm for this, but I'm like, if we can't, you know, what happens then? What's the next step?
That's a good question, and what Christy brought out that Jill confirmed regarding volunteers, I wrote this up before I knew that it was a different background check. So I mean, you could easily amend this, and that's why I guess we're discussing this today, because we're not going to adopt it today. Whereas volunteers are required to go through a background check as opposed to the same, and then hereby be resolved that we ask candidates to voluntarily undergo a background check, and that this include an example of criminal background, financial mismanagement, and be available for review by the public. We could ask that because you don't want to release public and private information about an employee or a volunteer, but should trustees be held to a higher standard? I mean, I think that's the question we have to answer, because what's the point of doing a background check if the public can't see it? And if a person says, it's none of your business, I'm not going to do it, well, then it begs the question, what are you hiding? You know?
So it speaks to how would we, if this is the direction the board wants to go, we will be seeking legal guidance on how do we operationalize this. And so this is why the conversation tonight is so important, because as you can already see, there's different levels of even background checks that we do. And so there'll have to be some further conversation. But Carlin, did you want to make any comments?
Yeah, I was just going to comment, definitely in favor of this. I think it's important that we share the same responsibilities that our other volunteers do. I think we need to determine what level that is. You have, because of the financial responsibility that we bear, I do think it's important to have a financial component of it in addition to the criminal side. So we just have to figure out what that level looks like, I think.
All right, Sarah?
To kind of echo Carlin, I'm in favor of this also, because at the bottom, like at the top of our priorities is the safety of our children. And if we have no background check, and at any point we have conversations and are in situations that we're around children regularly. So for number one, I definitely think we need to have at least some basic level of safety put in. Second is like being good stewards of our funds for elections, that we want someone who sits on this board, the community wants transparency. So if we have something in our background, then we want a candidate that is willing to be transparent about their background. And if they're not willing to be, that's something we want the community to know. In addition, elections cost school districts money. How much does an election typically cost that we have to? 25,000?
Between 40 and 50,000.
Okay, 24 to 50,000 an election. So
Between 40 and 50,000.
40 and 50,000. So an election costs our district, our taxpayer dollars. And if we have a candidate that's not a person of good, good moral, conscience, is that really something our taxpayers want us to be paying dollars for, to have that candidate? So if they're wanting to file, we want them to be able to be comfortable enough to say, hey, we have this background check and you need to disclose it to the public. So I agree. I think this is important for many reasons, for safety for our children, to being responsible for taxpayer dollars, and for like the integrity and character of our board.
So just a question, what does that look like for our current board? Is it something we make it retro, like we all go back and do a background check, just for full transparency? I think it would be fair for those going forward.
I think we need to, if this is something we're calling and we believe in, that this is the best interest of our district, then we need to stand by that as well and put our names on it. And I do think, like, if something comes up on someone and it was 15 years ago, I think the voters need to know that too, that's who they're voting. But like, that gives the opportunity for that person to be like, hey, 15 years ago I decided to run around, do silly things, but here's how I've changed my life and I'm better for it. So for future candidates, that it's okay to have something, just be transparent and let the community know they know who they're voting for.
Does anybody else want to make comments? I feel like I'm getting the overall gist of support. Yeah, I think there just needs to be a lot. Absolutely. And that will be on Jill and I and Rick to sort through some of those items and share with you in our board newsletters or at our next time that we have this posted on the agenda. We can give you an update. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next up on the agenda is the discussion of enrollment for 2026, 2027. This discussion will be led by Dr. O'Hare.
Thank you. Ooh, that's loud. Good evening, President Dr. Bruce, members of the board, and Dr. Kraft. I'm coming before you this evening to share information regarding our current enrollment picture for 26-27. So what you see here is a chart that shows our returning student registration as of May 26, 2026. So these are returning students. So you won't see any kinder or pre-K kids in these numbers unless they were with us last year, right? BISD began student registration for 26-27 in February of this year. As of May 26, 2026, 95.3% of returning students had completed student registration. Our campus staff continues to reach out to parents who still need to complete registration. We received our demographic report from PASA in February, if you remember, and we continue to track registration and enrollment and compare this to the campus and grade level projections we received from our demographers. You'll see some more information about that later on in this presentation. Our elementary campuses typically reach near 100% registration by the end of May, and our secondary campuses reach the mid to high 90s by the end of May. You can see that trend here, that we're pretty much on trend with that. And again, these numbers reflect, when you see that total down there of approved of 9,676, the majority of our pre-K and kindergarten numbers for next year are not reflected there. Here's another look. This is our 26-27 current enrollment by grade level. So here you do see some information on early education, pre-K, and kindergarten. And looking at our current enrollment by campus grade level for 26-27, you can see that when you include the early education, pre-K, and kinder, we have 10,781 students currently signed up for 26-27. When you compare these numbers to the PASA reduced projections, their reduced projection number was 11,233. So you can see there's a difference of 452 students between those two numbers. If you take a look at the column that says EE, which is early education, pre-K, and then kinder, and you look at the totals at the bottom, that's where most of that difference is coming from, about almost 300 students there. If you compare that EE number there of 43 to PASA's reduced model estimate for that group, it's about 30 students under. When you look at the pre-K numbers, when you compare that 126 down there at the bottom of the pre-K column to PASA's reduced enrollment projection of 202, it's about 76 students under. And when you look at the kinder number there at the bottom of 558 and compare that to PASA's reduced enrollment projection of 747, it's about 189 students under. Here you can see campus by campus. When you look at the first column there, that shows you the year-end 25-26 enrollment there in column 1. We've got PASA's reduced enrollment projections there in column 2. Keep in mind that when we get into our budget discussion, Mr. Scott's going to tell you that we're budgeting off of an enrollment of 11,179. So if you remember, we're actually using a number slightly lower than PASA's reduced model for budgetary purposes. We're using this year's snapshot number from October 26, basically staying flat. That's a difference of about 54 students. When you see there at column 3, these are the returning students that have registered. That was from that chart we just saw on the previous page, that 10,781. And then that next column, that fourth column, as of May 28th, we had 118 students that had submitted pending enrollment registration. They hadn't completed the process, but they're in the queue to complete those registrations. So that fifth column there in blue, that is the total active students and adding that 118, those pending student enrollment, that gets us to 10,899 students that are likely to be enrolled with us for 26-27. And that's a difference of 334 students you see in that last column from PASA's reduced enrollment projection. Notice that we do have one campus BHS that already sits above their projected enrollment. There are already 57 students above. And notice our secondary campuses are all very close to their projected enrollment at this point, with Champion High School being off by 7 students, Middle School North off by 9, and you can see those numbers there. So you can see the majority of the difference that you see there is mainly our elementary campuses. And pretty much all of that difference comes from pre-K, early education, and kinder numbers. So you can see like Kendall Elementary there showing a difference between their enrollment projection of 85 students. 45 of that 85 comes from the projected numbers for early education, pre-K, and kinder. When you look at Fabra's negative 64, off by 64, below their projected enrollment from the reduced model, 49 of that is from kinder, pre-K, and early education. CES, you see a negative 45. That's the exact difference. 45 of that is from kinder, pre-K, and early education. So what this tells you here is you look at that negative 344. If you take out the 54 student difference between what PASS's reduced model is and what we've budgeted as, that comes down to 280. So we're 280 students below what we're budgeting for currently. And where are the students? Those are coming from the anticipated kinder and pre-K and early education students. This is typical for us. We continue to enroll pre-K and kinder students all summer long, and those numbers continue to keep going up. We have students that come to us on the first day of school. We will have some no-shows on the first day of school from some of our other grade levels that'll cause those numbers to come down. But right now, it's a pretty promising enrollment projection picture for us. Questions and discussion?
Yeah, Dr. O'Hare, I mean, we have move-ins. I mean, it's June 1st today, and a lot of people move into their houses in June and July and August. And I know that, you know, from past years, the number of submitted that have not been approved yet usually runs a couple hundred for the first 3 weeks of school. So I agree with you. It seems like, you know, it's likely we'll hit our budgeted number.
Yeah, look, you're true. That's true. We continue to get move-ins during the summer. They'll continue adding to registrations across all grade levels. We'll continue to process those. We use our staff here and our staff at summer school to process student registrations during the summer after our registrars go off contract.
I know, just thinking back to maybe last year, do you remember kind of what the ratio was last year? Because I was thinking the Starry Start was a great success, you know, as we tried to really generate some excitement and some early enrollment. Do you think that was worthwhile, the efforts, and maybe the numbers don't look as bad as they could have?
It's definitely, I think we made some headway there, right? And communicating to our families, reaching out to our new families that are their first-time parents. This is their first kindergarten. This is their first student in pre-K. That's our hardest known audience to reach, right? If you're already with us and you have a fifth grader and you go, oh, I've got a kindergartner coming, we've got methods to communicate with you. And so it's using as many active ways that we can get out to the community as we can between now and July to let them know, hey, we're ready. You can go. You don't have to wait until, because different states do things differently. In some other states, you may have to wait until September, Labor Day. We actually have a little bit of an influx of students between the first day of school sometimes and Labor Day, because if you come from out of state, you think you don't have to start school till Labor Day. You come from other schools, and so they're like, oh, I didn't know I missed 2 weeks of school in Texas. And so that's just us trying to do the best we can to communicate that out to our prospective parents for first-time parents for kinder and pre-K.
And so these are the numbers as of last week. These numbers change every day. And you all get regular reports, and we'll continue to keep you updated over the summer. And I felt it was really important for you to see where we were, the date when we put this together right at the tail end of the school year. We will be doing more outreach to parents. I was talking to our communications team today about doing a Throwback Thursday, where every Thursday we do some post of kindergartners in action and excited for them to be a first grader, but then pushing again, enrolling our kindergartners. And so districts are doing a lot of creative things to get the word out and get our families registered and enrolled.
Well, we got this on Friday, and it went up 26 in 2 days. So, because it was 10,755, now it's 10,781. So,
that is on our summer to-do list. Yes. That was my question. We also have a new enrollment sign coming in that just got approved by the city, so we'll have a refresh sign out front as well. But we will be leveraging our marquees. Over the last couple summers, it has been challenging because not all of our marquees run on the same software, and getting access to them is always an obstacle course, but we will conquer it and get the information out on the marquees.
I just wanted to shout out to Currington for actually having 100% of their students fill out the paperwork. So good job, Currington.
Yeah, they get a little competitive. The last several weeks of school, we post this in the weekly principals newsletter so they can each see where their registrations are. And it's like, it's not a competition, but if it was.
Everything's a competition. All right. Thank you all for the great discussion. Thank you, Dr. O'Hare. Next on our agenda is the discussion of project at Bernie High School entry. This is Mr. Romero Carrera.
I guess, first of all, thank you for handling this, because this discussion, it started out a certain way and now it's turned into something a little bit different. I had to know what word to say. But really, the purpose of this discussion is pretty interesting. We're going to demonstrate the current state of the wall that you see at Bernie High School. And we're going to provide an overview of community survey feedback that we got. And then we're going to discuss the next steps. So to get us started, we want to kind of give you the history of this wall. We know that it was built in 1987. We had construction that was again, it was, well, we're going to have a little video a little later, and it's going to talk to you about how it was built, but we really started to see the iconic and meaningful symbol of campus pride that this sign actually had, or this wall actually had. And then here is...
Hey, Bernie High School, Bernie Greyhounds, standing in front of the wall. This is a wall that was built in 1987 when we turned the baseball field around and we had to have something to put in front of home plate. Also, where we put our marquee. This wall was built by Buddy Deckert's ag class under the supervision of our principal, Sam Champion. We have pictures of Jimmy Landers on the wall and different graduates during that time. Well, friends, the wall's leaning. During that time, we called it the Berlin Wall. Now it's the leaning wall of Bernie. And so we need your help in telling us how to remember that era and honor it, but also what you think would go in that place. So again, thank you. This wall, they did good, didn't they? 39 years? Are you kidding? And it's still pretty safe, but we need to be safer. And once again, 1, 2, 3, go Greyhounds.
You probably did that in one take.
It was one take, yes, one take. So if you look at this vantage point of the wall, there really isn't anything wrong with it, but it's this view that we're starting to see on the side. It's once you get past that center, there's only one way for this to go, and that's down. So once we started to see how much it was leaning, we certainly had to take action somehow in some way. So what we did is we did a safety assessment. We did that. We've completed that. We engaged a structural engineer to conduct a formal inspection of the wall, and he gave us a lot of his findings, and he gave us the risk level, and it was imminent failure was how he put it. So then we also looked at the needing for us to stabilize it with barricades, and we actually are stabilizing it right now with 2 pieces of metal posts, just to make sure that we're helping it from it coming down. But the barricades, or in this case, the fencing and the signage, which we've completed already, it'll help us to make sure that there's nobody getting on that sign or things like that. So we feel confident that we've done everything that we could or can to make it safe. But again, we want to make sure that we're taking the steps necessary for us to really take everything into consideration. And so these are the steps that we've taken to date. We've convened an internal leadership group. We've presented the current challenges to both our facilities committee, our bond oversight committee, and then we've captured the video that you just saw, and we shared it with the community. And then we're seeking their feedback on this, on a survey that we've completed. And we're also going to engage an architect to help us to provide us with cost estimates of the different options that we're going to be presented to, and we're going to be presenting to you, so we could again move forward with this project. So what were the results of the community feedback? Well, we know that there were 92 responses. This was taken between May 11th and May 27th. And we had a lot of different and unique ideas when it comes to what to do with this, with the sign. And so really we wanted to kind of show you a couple of them that we kind of felt that this is the direction that we were going in, because everybody wants to see this repurposed, incorporate something of the old sign into the new build, whatever that may be. And we also can see how the survey themes fell out like this. The rebuild and restore the wall, that was really the first that we had. And then in second place, we saw that the repurposing of the existing bricks in some way in order to be able to hold on to those memories. And then to relocate the wall or memorial, and then to improve the signage and visibility, and basically sometimes incorporating an electronic messaging sign, something to that effect. But we still need to check that. Our architect will check that with the city, because sometimes they don't allow in such a busy intersection to have something electronic, simply because it could distract drivers. And then, of course, we are maintaining the safety of the concerns that our community is having, and that's where the survey fell. So what are our next steps? Well, it is to secure a contract for a vendor to do whatever we have coming up. So we're going to have those options. We're going to present those options, and then we're going to secure the vendor. We're going to prioritize the safety and the structural integrity of it, and then preserve the school identity and tradition, and then to ensure a long-term durability and maintenance of that site. So those are the things that we've got, that we're looking forward to. We wanted to present this to you simply because these are the steps that we've taken. These are the things that we've seen that are of importance to all of us, to be able to make sure that we're headed in the right direction, not just with our community, but also the leadership here at Boerne ISD. Is there any questions?
Did you graduate that year?
I know a lot of the stuff that I was reading as far as feedback was that they wanted to see the students be involved in the process and be the ones to take the lead. I don't know where we stand on how we can accomplish that.
So again, the options that we're going to present, we're going to take a look at everything. And as you can see, safety is priority, and safety of our students is as well. So we understand that students originally built this. And as Coach Leach brought out, 39 years, it has lasted. So, but what we don't want to do is we definitely want to make sure that there's somebody that's going to be, and I hate to put it this way, but liable for anything that could happen with this wall. So whether that's to include some of our students, we'll have to see how we can maneuver that. Okay.
I think you just answered my question. And so there'll be different options that we'll provide to the community, or that we'll provide to a certain group of community members, something of that nature?
That's correct. What we're going to try to do is we're going to try to identify both by Coach Leach and by the principal, to kind of give us an understanding of what we want to do. And we kind of want to get the students' aspect as well as our community, and then present those options to the board to kind of see what direction we want to take it.
Well, I appreciate all the thoughtfulness that went into this, because it is so historic and traditional, and it's just kind of part of our Boerne landmark. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you so much for going the extra step for the survey. Thanks for listening and acting on that. It's extra work. As far as a timeline, what is something maybe we could expect for the next steps?
So what we're going to do, our next step is to kind of see what, we're going to go through not only the survey answers, but also who's actually submitting them. And to see really, are they viable? We had, I believe it was Andrew Waterman who gave us a suggestion there. And so we're not going to leave a stone unturned when it comes to this. And so as far as a timeline, we're going to take a look at that. We're going to present it to our leadership here and kind of make sure that the options are actually viable for everybody. And then we're going to take a look at how we can incorporate what the community would like. And so we're looking this summer as it, the good thing about it is that it's in a location where we can actually work and not impact the day-to-day operations of the campus.
So we really had a quick turnaround from when we put out the survey to when we closed the survey and when we're bringing it here to you tonight. And so Ramiro will convene with Stan and Shane and some others. And they need to go, feedback by feedback. There's a lot of great stories in there. And thankfully, we built a survey tool that allowed individuals to put their name and contact information so that we can reach out to them if there's some ideas we want to explore further. And many, honestly, they were volunteering. They wanted to help. And so it just goes to show how important this landmark is for our community, and we take it very seriously. And I just appreciate Ramiro for being the quarterback on this and getting all the right people around the table.
Yes, thank you, Romero. Do you have any other comments, Romero?
No, it just really shows how close of a community Bernie ISD is, as well as Bernie High School.
Any big donors?
We'll be looking for them. We'll be looking for Yvette to help us out with that.
Fellow trustees, any more comments on this? Can we move on?
One quick question. How did we originally realize the wall was leaning? So did we notice the maintenance or was it brought to our attention? Like, how did we figure that out?
Well, it's interesting because the vantage point that everybody sees doesn't look like there's anything wrong with it. But we started to notice it. Our maintenance department brought it to our attention that as they were cutting around there, they said there might be something wrong with this wall. And so as soon as we heard that, we started to really look at it. When we started to look at it, it really wasn't that bad. And it just kept getting worse and worse. And we knew that it was inevitable that it was going to fail. And so we took action as quick as we could.
I'm not an engineer, but without footing, our temperatures have been so extreme with drought and rain and back and forth that it seems to be imminent indeed. So for the fall.
And once again, what a great team we have that our maintenance, mowing the yard and weed eating noticed something like that to make sure that we take care of our traditions. So way to go, maintenance team.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, well, we are going to move on to our budget workshop with Mr. Wes Scott.
And actually, we'll start with Jill.
Is it up there? Okay. So we'll start today. Our purpose today is to revisit the budget initiatives and discuss some compensation scenarios, and then Mr. Scott will talk about the building blocks that he shared last meeting. So we want to go back to the pre-K initiative and bring you a little bit more information. And so Renee Munn gathered the information for us, just for us to be able to share the trends with you. And so when we look at our pre-K information, what this shows you is from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, we average a gain of about 50 students throughout the year. And so when we're planning for pre-K, our classes are always under-enrolled at the beginning of the year because we have to keep that space available for our special education students coming in, our state qualified pre-K students. And so our classes may seem somewhat smaller at the beginning of the year so that we have that space because we know we're averaging about 50 students a year from beginning to end. And you can already see as of May 2025, we have, is that 143, Renee? 143 registered and then 199. And I know Renee is gathering lots of lots of applications for students coming in already for this year. So when we look at our staff, the dark blue line there on top shows all of our staff. And then what Renee did was she, using the House Bill 2 rules, which made teachers a state qualified, she looked at if we had applied those House Bill 2 rules beginning in 2023, that light blue line shows how many of our enrolled staff children are actually teachers' children that qualify under those House Bill 2 rules. So you can see this last year, it was about 2/3 of our students were actually teachers' children. And so that was a significant impact when you think about 41 teachers' children that went from having to pay tuition to not having to pay tuition. And right now we have about 45 staff children enrolled, and 37 of those, so about 80% are teachers' children so far. Any questions before we move on? And Renee is here in case you have any pre-K questions as well. And so last time we brought to you two recommendations or two options. And so our recommendation that we're bringing to you today is actually to go to a $0 cost for our employees for pre-K. It does amount to about a $20,000 reduction in funding coming into the district, but we feel like the benefits, being able to provide no-cost pre-K to all of our staff, is going to outweigh that. Our staff will still pay the wraparound service fee, so that's for those students who are staying after the normal pickup time up until 5:30. And then all students that are enrolled, staff children pay the annual registration fee.
I've had a couple of questions. I think this is great. This is good retention and recruitment strategies, and what a nice thing we could do for our teachers that would save them thousands every year. Would our SROs be eligible for this?
So we did have the discussion today, and we are going to have our SROs be eligible for the no-cost pre-K.
That's great. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I think this is great, and it's going to be interesting to see what kind of growth we may have from our other employees aside from classroom teachers, because that was a savings of $675 a month. That's $6,750 a year net after tax. That's huge. So it'll be interesting to see, as Christy mentioned, a recruiting tool. I mean, wow. I can imagine people taking a pay cut of a couple of bucks an hour to come work for the district to get this program covered for their kids.
And we've already had folks reaching out to us from other districts where their districts are not offering this and asking if Bernie is providing the no-cost child care. So people are watching because so many districts have taken the cost down to zero for their staff.
So I love this idea, especially for like our teacher assistants and those. But just for transparency, do we have the capacity to, like, how many more kids would we estimate? Like, do we have the capacity? Are we going to have enough funds for the teachers? Because we now may need another class of pre-K, and where do we put them? Like, well, do we have all that?
I'm going to let Renee answer
Okay,
that
sorry,
question.
Renee. But yes, I am for this. I just want to understand the whole scope of it.
Yeah, just based on projections, and thank you so much for allowing me to come share. I would predict that our numbers are going to be steady, but again, because they're not, if we look at non-eligible students, we're always going to prioritize eligible students first. So non-eligible placements, those staff members whose children don't qualify, that will be based on as space is available. So we will be able to manage those requests on a first come, first serve, and as space is available, we certainly would want to extend that offer. At the same time, still being able to balance our classrooms in a meaningful and manageable way. Yes, so we've offered a couple of different sessions for staff to get online with me, let me explain the different program types that we offer, the logistics, the hours. The teachers really love the extended care services. It's so important if you work at central office or in facilities, or you're a secondary teacher at one of the secondary campuses, to have those extended hours so that you can fulfill your work hours before you pick up your child. I think Dr. Kraft mentioned staff from, or potential staff from outside the district. I've had several phone calls from current employees in neighboring districts who have already heard about where we're hoping to go with this idea and have already applied in the district. Some have already interviewed and are waiting to find out the outcomes of tonight's discussion. So I do see the potential for additional staff coming. And for instance, one of the folks that reached out to me was a speech language pathologist. And if you know anything about our special education positions, those positions are hard to fill. So being able to attract hard to fill positions and use this as a benefit, I think is a win-win for the district.
Thank you for being here.
Ms. Rhodes-Perrin, real quick, or Ms. Mund, just whenever you talk about a child being ineligible, can you let us know like what makes that?
Good question. So the state has a number of eligibilities in which your child can qualify for state eligible pre-K. In Bernie ISD, we offer a state eligible pre-K for 4-year-olds. So the first piece is you have to be 4 years old on or before September the 1st of the school year, and you have to meet an area of eligibility. Those eligibilities run anywhere from income-based eligibility, meaning that the family qualifies for free and reduced tuition. We have military-connected eligibilities. So if you're active duty, military, and or disabled or Purple Heart, those are eligibilities for pre-K. We have homeless, current or former foster care, just a variety, and HB2 classroom teachers now fall under those different areas.
Thank you. Okay. Any other discussion on pre-K? Thank you so much, Ms. Munn. Okay, so we want to go back to and talk about our compensation recommendations. So one of the things that you guys asked last time we met was, where do we compare to other districts? And so, you know, with the Vader, we were able to increase our starting pay, but because so many other districts were near where we brought our starting pay when House Bill 2 was implemented, and they applied the $5,000 amount to the 5-year and beyond teachers, it really put us behind the other districts again at the year 5 mark. And so on this chart, what you can see where Bernie is. So we're 5th in starting pay, but then every place where you see the orange shading, we are below those other districts. And so I did do an average of the Region 20 there at the bottom. And so just for an example, if you look at year 5, the Region 20 average is slightly over 64,000, and our year 5 is 61,200. And if you look at year 10, you know, same type, average is 66.8, and we're at 63.3. So we are very attractive at the lower levels, and we still have a lot of great quality applicants coming to us, but we do know that we're not as competitive with surrounding districts because of the House Bill 2 increase that happened this past year. Any questions before we move on?
Yeah, what I'm seeing here is we're pretty competitive at the start and decently competitive at the end, but the middle is kind of the messy middle, as always. Is this factored in with Comal's, what they just passed last week?
It is not. It's based on the current pay scales. So we
Okay.
know that Comal just passed a 3%.
Yeah.
So that's not in here. But what I do want to share is, so we want teachers to know that we heard them. After the Vader, we had the opportunity to share compensation statements, and we met with a number of teachers and other staff. And what we heard was, you know, our novice teachers got a pretty big jump with the Vader, but those mid-year teachers didn't get as much. And so wanted to bring to you a couple of different options just so you can see how we can get ourselves tracking toward what our comparator districts are doing. It's not going to be something that we can fix in a year. It may take a couple of years, but bringing to you a couple of options tonight. So option one, which you see up in the purple, what that does is that creates a kind of a sliding scale starting at year 5 at about a 1.6% increase, and when we get up to year 30 it's about a 3.9. So it's a gradual increase from year 5 to year 30. But as Dallas said, our higher level teachers aren't where our needs are. Our needs are really in the mid-level. So option 2 does something a little different. It actually starts at about 3.6 and increases to about 4% at year 30. And so basically all of our teachers from years 5 to year 30 would be getting a 3.5 to 4% increase depending on what level they were at. So if you look at we just gave you the bands, right? So if I'm a year 4 teacher this year, I'm at 60,800. Under option 1, I would go to 61,800, which is a 1.6% increase. But under option 2, I would go to 63,000, which is a 3.6% increase. So we showed you this in each of the 5-year bands from year 5 to year 30. And so you can see how the bands, you know, the percentage increases kind of at each band. We do have a little bit of an anomaly around the 11-12 year mark right now, and so you'll see on that option 1 from year 10 to 15, year 10 is slightly higher, where year 15 is 1% lower, just because of that anomaly we're trying to correct. But just wanted you guys to actually be able to see, because we always have people ask, like, what does it mean for a teacher? Right? So then you can actually see what would this do for our teacher pay.
Okay, I got several of them. Do we have a price tag on either one of these?
Yes, I'm going to share that
Okay,
here
I
in
imagine
just a bit.
that's it. I'm really, I think with what's going on in public education in the state, there's a lot of moving parts that I'm going to be really, really interested to follow, to see, because watching this, one, the Kamal one, because we look at it, I think there's only like 2 districts that were kind of outperforming in certain areas. But if Kamal now is up there kind of closer to the Cibolo Shirts funding formula, it looks like that's probably where they'll be. That puts us kind of well behind even further. But I am curious to see what other districts are going to do whenever they're releasing, 2%, 5% of their staff, where those cuts are made, because I imagine they're going to want to make sure the student to teacher ratio is good. And I think I know where those decisions are going to be made, but I'm going to be interested to see how that shakes out.
Yeah, and we're not hearing a lot. I know we have heard from some districts that they are actually increasing their class size ratios because they are eliminating. They're not necessarily invoking a RIF, but they are eliminating teacher positions through attrition. And so I think we are going to see districts that are increasing their student ratios.
Part of that is I'd like to know districts, what their weight is, as far as, are they weighted at 12 years, are they weighted at 30 years? Are we a young teaching staff? Are we an old, or more mature, more seasoned? And what the average actually is.
And it's we're not going to be able to typically know that about other districts. When we look at our district, I've shared with you guys in the past that at any point we have about 20% of our staff, teachers and non-teachers, that are eligible to retire. And we saw some of that this year, like at Fabra. Fabra had 7 teachers that retired, and so we do have staff that are starting to retire. The one thing that did help us with House Bill 2 is those teachers all got a $5,000 increase. So we've actually had a lot of teachers who maybe were thinking about retiring that have decided to stay on because your retirement is based on your highest 5 years. And so I think we'll see some of our more veteran teachers stay on a little longer, but no guarantees, right? So, we probably we are getting more first-year teachers, but it's not the bulk of our staff. Like we had, I think, 23 first-year teachers this year, where it's not unusual for a lot of districts to have, 10 to 20% of their teachers that are first-year teachers. We're probably at about 4% of our teaching staff that are first-year teachers.
I like what you said about, now we had to start somewhere, and that was our story during the Vader. We had to start somewhere, and this is a great opportunity. I feel like even, Bernie ISD being a destination district, we have to be appealing in the middle whenever they're getting ready for their last 5 to 6 to 7, 8 years of teaching. So, looks good.
Any other questions?
Jill, I know you and your team did a lot of work of really leveling up the pay steps and trying to make sense of all that, and we surely appreciate everything you did. So I'm seeing like the pay steps from year 5 to year 10 to 15, very small. I mean, they're differing percentages, albeit very small, but then we have 20, 25, and 30 all is at 4%. Is there a reason for differing percentages for those pay steps?
So it's as we're trying to level out the pay steps and create equity within those steps and scales, right? It just kind of it's the way that it plays out, because we can see that our middle was lower, and so the goal was to try like option 1 really was more of a sliding scale, right, where it was kind of just gradually increasing all the way up. But when we look at where we are with our comparator districts, we are doing pretty well in those upper areas. So we didn't necessarily cap it, but we were able to kind of maintain that 4% as the high, and it still gives those individuals a pretty decent jump, but it creates a similar type jump in those middle areas.
So let's go to the next slide, and you can see what this costs. Because again, we heard feedback from our employees, about the teachers with the middle years of experience. And so this is a proposal that helps put 3, if not 4%, to those teachers speaking to their years of experience. So here you can see the bottom line of what this would cost option 1 versus option 2.
So it is a 1% increase for all of our staff that are not on the TNLIC scale, right? So teachers, nurses, librarians, instructional coaches would get that higher percentage, and then all other staff would be at the 1%. So you can see the difference in cost is about little less than $700,000 between option 1 and option 2.
I brought with me our current pay scale that's on the website, which shows the 24-25 pay scale and the 25-26. And if we go with option 2, a 5-year teacher who at the end of the 24-25 school year, May of 25, so just 13 months ago, was at $55,717. Now they'd be at $63,000. That's a $7,300 raise, or 13.1% in 13 months. That goes up to almost $8,000 at 10 years, 13.8%. $8,300 at 15 years, 13.9%. $8,900 at 20 years, 14.2%. $9,500 at 25 years, 14.8%. And 30 years, we were already somewhat competitive, $8,700 up 12.7%. This is substantial. This is the most aggressive by far I've seen in 12 years on the board. And of course, some of it was the state, obviously the state put in 5,000 for veteran teachers. When you're looking at raises of almost $10,000 for a 25-year teacher, almost half that came from, from the locals. So I think this is good work, really good.
Can you repeat those percentages again for the slide? So, yeah, just read them. I think it. No.
Okay, so at 5 years, it's 13.1%. At 10 years, it's 13.8%. At 15 years, it's 13.9%. At 20 years, it's 14.2%. At 25 years, it's 14.8%. And at 30 years, it's 12.7%.
I just said that's without any other legislation increases. The ones Rich read off, those are the 25-26 school year. Or that would be the increase.
Okay, so that doesn't include the percentage if we go with one of these options, what that percentage would be from additionally. Okay. Okay. And those weren't that though? Or that was that? Sorry, I'm just making sure I'm understanding completely.
So Rich pulled off a pay scale from the website.
Okay.
Where we have 24, 25 compared to this year. So he took the 24, 25 pay scale and compared it to the numbers that Jill just showed.
Okay.
And that's where you get the 13% and so forth.
Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah.
That's good.
Now, if we can just tell Facebook that, that'd be great. Okay, I have some questions here because I think in our position, it's really easy to spend money. It really is. So what I'm looking at is kind of option one, I think is somewhere around like a 2% on average raise, if we're just going to go blanket something to that effect. And option two is like a 3.6 or something like that average. I mean, might be off 0.2 or something, but generally speaking, what in our budget has increased 2% or 3%?
I'll show you how this will impact the budget as a whole as we progress. I've got these numbers built in. We'll talk about that. I don't want to spoil the surprise right now.
Jill has one more slide about this.
So we talked about this, the benefit increases at our meeting last month. And so just to kind of refresh, right, we are seeing about a 7% increase in benefit costs. That was one of the lowest in the state. Region 20 was actually one of the lowest in the state, so we were actually very pleased. But you can see it ranges for an employee only at a low of 31 to an employee family to a high of $125 a month. So that's just a recap. We talked about this last time. So also I wanted to just share the history of our benefits because a lot of us haven't been here all that time. And so when we look at what our employee contributions have been in the last 10 plus years, you can see that back in 2015, we were at 262, and you can see what typically happens is the benefit contributions are increased about every second year. And in most cases, they're fairly small increases. You see $11, $15, and then we had this significant increase last year where we increased each band by $60 a month or $720 in a year. You can also see that line there between 17-18 and 18-19. That was the year that Bernie began to differentiate based on the type of plan that was taken. So we are one of the few districts that actually does that. Most districts provide just a standard benefit contribution, and it doesn't matter which plan you take, but we actually do differentiate that. But the other piece I wanted to bring to your attention is the statutory minimum that the state requires is $225 a month. And we are paying, if you look at our employee only, what we contribute for an employee only is 75% higher than the state requirement. And if you look at employee family, what we're contributing is $120 more, or 120% more than the state minimum. And so we're providing a significant benefit to our employees. With some of the recommendations that we are making for the teacher pay increases, at this time we're not recommending an increase to our benefit contributions, given that we had a substantial increase last year, and so we would maintain those same benefit contributions during the 26-27 school year that you see for the current school year.
I want to say thanks for putting this chart together, because I think it does reflect the district's commitment to helping offset the increases that have been occurring. We don't ever want to do anything at the statutory minimum, right? We expect more from our employees, and so we ought to be compensating them more. So I think that's very important to show that. And I do think kind of historically we've done it every other year, and so that does make sense to me. And again, the last thing I'd say with that is feedback that we've heard year over year. I think it's important to make sure that we're helping offset the cost of this, but this doesn't go to TRS for their retirement. What they get in their raise goes to TRS for their retirement.
Yeah, and when you look at the 10-year trend, what's not included in this is that because of the substantial increases in district contributions to benefits, the increase that our employees are paying for benefits versus 10 years ago is really not that bad. It's pretty reasonable. I mean, an example for the employee only, which is like 63% of the total enrollees are employee only. So that's a solid majority. Most of them are on a plan have either seen an increase of $41 over 10 years per month or a decrease of 20. That's pretty good. And then employee kids is another more than a quarter, and the increase that they're spending on average is less than $100. So when you compare that to the raises they've gotten in pay, it's a small fraction of the raises they've gotten in pay. And it would be nice to increase the benefits. And, you know, I play with these numbers every year, but I'm really excited about what I saw on option 2 regarding our teachers. And that to me is such a compelling story that I think, personally, I think that's where our resources ought to go, you know. And we can take a look at benefits next year.
Did you say this was your last slide? Are you recommending, or is the team recommending any increases to any of our stipends? I ask because I have a couple of constituents that have just been advocating for BOA that they've had since 2019. It's been the same stipend as a campus director for $700 a year. And just the amount of workload that has increased over the years. Just wanted to bring that to the team's attention, how important BOA is. And the leaders, each campus has one director, and they pretty much work year round. And so I just want to voice what I've heard from a couple of constituents.
And I can let Dr. O'Hare address BOA, because it's funded through the fees that we collect. So it's a little bit different than a regular stipend.
Yeah, we're looking at it. We're exploring an opportunity. I was having a conversation in a different leadership team meeting with Mr. Scott about the revenues that we get on the food service side. And one of the things he's going to look into, this team's going to look into for me, is whether we can use the food service money to fund the students that we feed at BOA. Because we're feeding our students breakfast, we're feeding our students lunch. It goes to the reason that we should be able to use food service money for that. If we are able to do that, then that will offset That is our second highest cost for BOA is the food cost, which will free up more funds for us to look at increasing some of our stipends. So we're looking at it.
Thank you.
Courtney, if I can, the other thing I would say, going back to the slide prior to this, one more actually, I too like the option 2. I think year 1 in getting the Vader passed and getting all of those steps adjusted was a monumental task, and so now having some breathing room to really look at what those tiers look like, I really think that option 2 gets us going in the right direction to get those middle years of education experience compensated appropriately.
I also agree. Sorry, I also agree with option 2. I think it's exciting and very deserving, and it helps, keep telling the story that we began with. And just to clarify, in case someone doesn't fully understand the pay scale steps, but if you go back a slide, just to clarify, these are just snapshots of these years, but it will continually flow from year to year to year.
I'll back up what Christy said, that, before the Vader, and Jill, I think you've done some great work on fixing our pay scales, because our pay scales, if we went back a couple of years, there really was no logic to it. I mean, the annual steps were all over the place. And if you look at most school districts, there's a consistent, whether it's 350 a year, 400 a year, whatever the number is, there's a logic to it. And there was, I couldn't figure out a logic to our step system, and now I can. And that's not an easy thing to accomplish, nor was it cheap to accomplish. And I think the average person out in the community doesn't realize that, particularly the people on Facebook, but that's a whole other issue.
Well, I think the intentionality of the team to be willing to meet with teachers who had questions, I think that went a long way too. If people were confused why different years look differently than what they expected. So I think time and listening and explaining, and then I think this next step is showing them that we're for them. But I think all the meetings, I think that went a long way.
And just to piggyback on that, when I first started here, we could not fill all of our bus driver positions. And through good data and bringing the board proposals, we were able to make really smart investments in different employee groups. And then we tackled the critical needs for special education highly certified staff. So compensation is complex. It takes time to get it right. And Christy, your point, we had to start somewhere. And so we have a fantastic story to tell. All the intentional moves this board has made to make sure that we were competitive in every employee group and at every year of experience. So this is another one of those steps. And I'm just really thankful for the team and also for Jill's expertise to really envision what this can look like going forward. And through all the conversations that we have with Finance Committee at these budget workshops, every conversation we have helps inform the team and goes back and thinks differently. And this is where we landed today. Now, that's just the first part of the budget workshop. So let's transition to Mr. Scott, and he'll go through building blocks.
Real quick, Sarah, did you have a question?
I was echoing what you were saying of that. I appreciate the team going out and talking with the teachers and hearing them of where our greatest needs are with our finances and our resources. And then also echoing off of Dallas of where that fits in the big scheme of our budget from what Mr. Scott will hopefully be showing us here soon.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Let's review our building blocks again, and any changes, if I can get the direction going the right way there. We're basing next year's enrollment on a snapshot of 11,179. That's what we had at the end of October of 26. This is a flat enrollment. If you remember from the last time I presented, we had ADA at 10,562. I've reduced that down to 10,530. That's because that's how we landed this year. We did budgeted enrollment for 10,562, but that was based on enrollment of 11,237. We didn't quite reach that this year, right? So actually, 10,530 is 1/100th of a percentage point higher than last year, which is for budgetary purposes, we talk about ADA as a percentage of snapshot enrollment, right? And that's not how the TA or the district accounts for ADA throughout the year. At what that translates to day to day in school operations is about 95.5%. But it's pretty simple to take 10,530 of 11,179 and get to 94%. That's why we present it that way during budget. The preliminary numbers have not changed from last time. It still presumes a slight decrease in the M&O tax rate of a little over 2 cents. And that produces a little bit larger M&O levy to the tune of almost $3 million. And all right, let's talk some more about the general fund. So the $120.3 million is what we're projecting and what we're recommending for a budget. Just for comparative purposes, the property taxes is a little over $2 million higher. For budgetary purposes, I'm using a little bit lower number than what you saw on the previous slide. Yeah, we always play that conservatively, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. The other local revenues are a little bit lower. We're doing that in anticipation of interest rates going lower. We want to be very conservative on our interest income and how we depend on that for recurring costs. That's offset. That decrease in interest income is offset a little bit by what we do for facility rents. So that was only about a $400,000 decrease. We have the decrease in state aid and entitlement, which is just a not quite a dollar for dollar decrease, because we did have. I know Mr. Pice was asking a little bit earlier about what went up 2 to 3%. You know, what we did see was an increase in the CTE funding. And there's a little bit of an increase built into the state funding formula, but not much. Overall, just a little over $1 million, and you can see as the bottom line below is almost a $1.2 million increase in revenues. Any questions about revenues? Okay. So let's look at the big picture. You can see the $120.3 million revenues. We've got two scenarios here, one with the two compensation scenarios that Ms. Pruin presented earlier. You see those on the compensation line of just under 1.4 and at $2 million. In between, we have base expenditures of just over $119 million. What that number represents is the 25-26 budget that was presented at the May board meeting. You adopted a budget amendment at that point in time. There were a couple of one-time amounts in that budget amendment. Those have been taken out for purposes of recurring costs. We have $320,000 for additional positions from program growth, mostly at the Health Sciences P-TECH Academy. We've got $1 million in budget initiatives. And what that shows is we have if adopted in the first scenario, that would be just a little under $1.5 million deficit. And if you did the second compensation scenario that Ms. Pruin showed earlier, that would be just under a $2.1 million deficit. That 2% of our budgeted revenues is $2.4 million. So both of those options are under the 2% line that we kind of use as a limitation for what we'll adopt as a budgeted deficit. I want you to keep in mind that right now the 25-26 budget is projected to come in at a surplus of $2.9 million. I know anytime, whether we're used to it or not, anytime that you adopt a deficit, it's a little bit, it makes everybody, including the accountant, a little bit nervous. And so I wanted to talk about a history of what we've done as a district. And then I'll actually show you too, not just my slide. Well, I'll go there we go. Is that the right way? That's the right way. Okay. This year we adopted a balanced budget with the Vader, and we're coming in with a $2.9 million surplus. In 24-25 was the most extreme, where we adopted a $5.2 million deficit and came in with a $3.6 million surplus. And you can see in the last 3 years, we've adopted those small under 2% budgets. You know, in 24-25 would be the only year that we went beyond that. And it's come out for the district every time, right? We do have a practice of underestimating revenues and overestimating expenditures, and some of those, especially when you look at 24-25, are kind of extreme. Why do we have such a disparity between what we adopt and what actually comes in? Man, I'm going to figure this out at some point in time. It's too complicated. Okay, so why the disparity between adopted and actual? First thing I want to point out is that we don't rely on the market. We don't rely on interest rates. You know, as a reminder, you know, there'll only be a couple of board members that were here when I came in October of 20, and we were yielding about $70,000 in interest income because the pools were yielding about 0.2 and 0.3%. That was those were historically low years. It probably won't see that again anytime soon, but you just never know. So we just don't depend on the market. We adopt a very low expectation for interest income, and so that anything comes in that's great, that's good. If we can use it on one-time costs, or we can use it to build fund balance, that's great, but we don't want to rely on that. There are aspects of the state funding formula that have become increasingly volatile. Had conversations at the Capitol today where there were members of the Speaker of the House knew that Bernie lands in a weird place in the funding formula on a regular basis, and I've gotten that feedback several times. Why is it always Bernie? We'll discover that mystery someday, but as the legislature tries to reduce property taxes, which is great, it's up to the comptroller, it's up to the TEA to take that legislation and do rulemaking. To implement that, it's complicated for a lot of districts, especially for somebody like Bernie, where we have high property wealth and low economically disadvantaged student population. And with the example of the frozen levy that you're becoming familiar with, as I constantly talk about this, we'll first find out about it about halfway through the year. There'll be an adjustment to the tune of millions of dollars. We may find out exactly what that is, and if we get it in the 11th month of the fiscal year, after the fiscal year, one of the reasons for that big swing in 24-25 that you saw a couple of slides ago was because of millions of dollars that we got from 23-24 that we didn't get until the fall of 25. After the end of we recognized it in 24-25, but it was several months after year end, right? And I guess that's to the extent that it generally has worked out for Bernie. It's good to ride these waves of legislation as they do good things for the taxpayers. But in the meantime, while it is so volatile, we're going to budget very conservatively. Our practice is to underestimate revenues and overestimate expenditures. I've given you the example of interest income on the revenue side. On the expenditure side, We're going to always budget for all of our positions. We're not going to budget for a percentage of filled positions during the year. To the extent that we fill those positions that have been created, we have to be able to pay for them budgetarily, right? So we're always going to do that, even though there's never going to be a circumstance where we're 100% employed in all of our positions all year long. And then one aspect to always consider when we're talking about Bernie ISD budget practices is that we are a June 30th year end. And for school districts that have that fiscal year end, remember that they can be a June 30 fiscal year end, or they can be a traditional August 31 year end. You know, 20 or 30 years ago, the state changed a law that allowed you to become a June 30 year end. One thing that's nice about that is that your school year is entirely contained within your fiscal year. But the offside to that is that you're adopting a budget before you have certified values, before you know what enrollment is, and that's an advantage that August 31 districts have. When they adopt their budget, they know what certified values are. They know have a much better idea of how many students are going to show up at their doors before they adopt their budget. And because of that, we will always treat our numbers very conservatively. And with that, before we move on to the other two funds that the board's responsible for adopting, if there are any questions about, my goodness gracious. Oh, let's go back one more slide to there. And if there are any questions about the choices that are before you at this point in time, I'll be happy to entertain questions.
If I can talk about so one of my biggest concerns is I know, Dr. Kraft, you had a board of kind of wants, needs, dream board, I would say. And some of the things we talked about already today about funding that were on that board. But I want to make sure that we have the capacity to take care of those budgetary items that are, I think, more of needs than wants in a lot of places, making sure that we're able to cross some of those off, because some of them are one-off expenditures that are just going to come around every once in a while. And I want to make sure we're taking care of those needs that you have.
Mr. Scott, how much did we see come in from budget initiatives?
$6 million.
So part of the budget process, everyone, including principals, department leads, they put in what do they need or what are they asking for, their special projects and so forth. But you can see that through a series of refining the lists, we have landed on just over $1 million in budget initiatives, and that speaks to really covering some essential items like CTE costs and student insurance for CTE, certification costs. Teacher residency is something that we really need to be doing, and so some of these dollars goes towards those partnerships. Dr. O'Hare is over technology, so there's, as he was uncovering needs in the technology area, about 120,000 of this goes towards some technology maintenance. We also know that we have an SRO contract increase to the tune of $50,000. That's in the number. And we're always going to try to add bus driver positions as we can. And so this also includes 2 bus driver positions. And so there's always going to be more wants at the end of the day. But when you think about what can we absorb into our budget, this is where the team has landed.
Yeah, Wes. And I know that you're conservative on things like investment income, because at some point down the road rates are going to come down. Doesn't look like it's going to happen anytime soon, but you don't want to count on investment income as a recurring source of revenue, because just a few years ago we were generating not that much, and now we're generating a decent amount. So I think that's smart budgeting. But I'm assuming this revenue projection does not include any revenue from unintended consequences.
It doesn't, and thank you for bringing that up, because I'd meant to say something about that. In that we were notified about a month ago by Moat Casey that the TA had identified 4 to 6 districts that they felt had suffered harm from House Bill 2 and were eligible for unintended consequence funding. And I did up at the Capitol Day have a chance to talk with Amy Copeland, who's the Chief Financial Officer with the Texas Education Agency. And she related that she thought that their calculations for unintended consequences were strong. They made sense. And that what was happening is they were waiting for tax collections because there's a module called the Tax Information Survey where every year the Texas Education Agency asks districts to supply them with the taxes that we've collected, that we're going to collect. It opened today. It doesn't close until August 31st. And that's part of what they do to finalize the settle up. And so they're waiting for those tax collections, which presumes that we're not going to see anything communication-wise about unintended consequences until August 31st. But that we won't see anything before August 31st. Keeping in mind that and this was good to talk to Amy about too, because the TA has calculated unintended consequences for those districts two different ways. One is when you see what you've gained out of House Bill 2 and you subtract out the teacher retention allotment and the support staff allotment, what do you have left? What the TA is calculated for us shows that in 25-26 that was $2.9 million loss, and that's the funding that we would get is $2.9 million for unintended consequences. They've also been asked to calculate adding the allotment for basic cost to that, and that takes us to $4 million. What Ms. Copeland was telling me today is that those first two allotments, the TRA and the support staff allotment, the SSA, that's in statute. The adding the allotment for basic cost is not, and so I haven't been able to confirm all that yet today. Miss Copeland's pretty knowledgeable on all that stuff, so I'm going to have some trust there. But all that is to say, there is the potential for additional funding that could turn this deficit into a surplus fairly quickly after adoption, considering that it has to go through the governor's office for approval and through the legislative budget board for approval. That was stated in session today. I've been told a couple different things on that. One was it had to be agreed to by the governor, lieutenant governor, and speaker, and today they said the governor and LBB. I think, let's just say it has to go through approval beyond the TEA right now. But because of that approval process, I am going to not recommend that we build that into our adopted budget. But I have some reliance that it's coming.
But I think that's wise to take that approach. But between being conservative on investment income, and we generally are reasonably conservative on expenditures, and based on the track record of us adopting deficit budgets, but then actually having surpluses, I feel comfortable with the higher level of teacher pay increase. And if we get good news on the unintended consequences, would that put us in a position to do some maintenance work, but also could we do something for our other employees that are not going to get the kind of raise, the 1%, particularly the hourly workers, because if they're on health benefits, the 1% may not be enough to offset the increase in health insurance. And I'd like to see us to be able to do something for them.
Yeah, you think about this, there's what we could rely on coming in 26-27. There's also monies that we'll receive after the fiscal year end, right? If we're looking at a $2.9 million surplus for 25-26, that does not count receiving another $2.9 million. So you have monies that in either year I would recommend be spent on a one-time basis, right? Whether that's a one-time pay our employees, whether that's deferred maintenance. Excuse me. I would recommend one time and then for those dollars.
Yeah, I would completely concur with what you said. We can't rely on those funds until they come through the door. Was it last week or the week before, Dr. Kraft, you shared the article with us? I think it was Crystal City laid off. Yeah, third of their staff, basically. We cannot be put into that kind of position. So that is fiscal mismanagement. That next slide showing what our budget adoption was versus the surplus is something that I think we ought to show on a monthly basis almost, because people can easily latch on to you're adopting a deficit budget and not see what the reality is. And then, reminding, why that happens. Those after fiscal year end adjustments and things like that is really important. But I have a tremendous amount of confidence in adopting deficit budgets based on what our history has shown. So thank you for what you do.
Can you go one more slide, please? Oh, no, the other way, maybe. I'm trying to see where that projected 2.9 million surplus that we're projecting, which we don't know is a hard and fact. You were saying do we build that into the next year's budget at all? No.
That is this year's results.
this year.
That's anticipated results. That's based on results through April 30th.
Okay. And then what do we do with that money?
That builds fund balance.
Okay.
Anytime you need to build fund balance as your district grows, as your budget grows, you want to be sure you have at least 3 months of operating expenses in there. This will put fund balance over $30 million. It will be over 3 months of expenditures, and at that point in time, you want to carefully consider and be strategic if you wanted to spend that money down on one-time costs.
On one time. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, a little historical perspective. If you go back a decade ago, we were maybe 2 months fund balance, and the auditors recommend, 3, because, our fiscal year ends June 30th. We don't collect tax money till October, mid to late October is when the cash comes in. We get some state aid in September, October, we get some state aid. But basically, we need that 3 months fund balance to be able to make payroll and cover our costs. And you'll see at a 122 million plus, we need close to 31 million in fund balance. That 2.9 million will get us above 31 million. So to Mr. Scott's point, we'll have a little bit more than 3 months fund balance. So that's a good position to be in. I know when Carl and I joined the board, we were not there. And so it was always a little bit nerve-wracking, So it's a nice position to be in.
Just as a reminder, and just one note, we may have to adjust the budget a little bit to give Dr. Kraft a stipend for advancing slides. Yes. And there are no changes here, but just as a reminder, you have responsibility to adopt budgets for 3 different funds: the general fund, the debt service fund, and the child nutrition fund. The debt service fund, we're scheduled to have a little under 40.5 million in principal and interest payments on our outstanding debt. That's highlighted by 17 million towards the 2025 refunding, which is effectively the 2016 debt that was used to build Van Rob and Voss and one other school. What was the other school? I don't remember. But HERF, there we go. And so that was the result of the restructure. We will accomplish that with our 31.4% tax rate. And because of the restructure, we're able to take advantage of all state funding in the coming year, which should be about $3.5 million. And then we would move on to our child nutrition fund.
Wes, if you could go back, to put things in perspective, the previous slide, to put things in perspective, If you looked at our bond indebtedness required payments, principal and interest, like on a mortgage payment, it's not 40 million, it's like 26, 27 million. So the delta you'll see in the 2025 refunding, that's paying down debt early, which saves us millions of dollars of interest payments. Now, the 2016 series, which was half of the 16 bond, which built those 3 schools, that was $87.5 million. After this payment of 17 million is made, we'll have a balance of 40 million in principal. So 11 years into a 30-year note, which is no longer a 30-year note, 11 years into that, we've paid off 55% plus the principal. That's unheard of in a mortgage. Homeowners don't pay off 55% of their principal in 11 years. They pay off maybe 20. So the district is well ahead of what a lot of other people do in terms of paying off our debt.
Yeah, if you put there's about a $12 million defeasance we did in this year on the 16s. We did a smaller one to the tune of $3 or $4 million the year before, an early defeasance on the 16s. It's been well over $30 million that we've paid off in the last 3 fiscal years. That will cap in February of 27. All right. The Child Nutrition Fund has to be a balanced budget. The 4.3 million is reflective of our current budget. We're recommending that carry forward into 26-27. And as a reminder, the Child Nutrition Fund for 25-26 is operating at about a $170,000 surplus with results through April 30th. All right. This is bringing us to the peak of the budget development timeline. We're in June, where we will the next time that we'll meet will be on the 15th to adopt the budget. So, any other questions or comments about that process?
So, quick question, going back to your conversations at the state capitol today. There's a period open now through August 31st for what kind of, you said they wouldn't make any decisions till the final numbers are submitted to the comptroller's office.
Well, it's to the TA.
To the TA, okay.
So they don't know what kind of tax collections we actually have, right? Things are looking a little bit better this year than normal, right? Okay. We're a little bit ahead of percentages that we've been collecting. To the extent that plays out, it may reduce a little bit. To the extent that we fall below, it may increase that number.
But that's something we will present to TEA then, based on that tax collection.
Yes.
Okay. What confused me, the reason I ask is because the appraisal district doesn't submit property values to the state comptroller till November, and I was confusing the two myself.
Yes.
So thank you for straightening that.
They present the values, right? We've informed the TA on collections.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah, I did. I watched the testimony in the until Mr. Senna was finished talking, and then I decided it wasn't worth watching anymore. But the first panel was definitely not happy with TEA's and the legislative budget board's numbers that they were given. It's probably the easiest and nicest way to say that. So I'm glad to see that the legislators are recognizing that there's capable people not in Austin that can calculate those much better, Mr. Scott. So, and then the last thing, since Mr. Scott was talking about Dr. Kraft, I think it would be nice to say congratulations. I saw today in the San Antonio Business Journal that you were announced as one of the 2026 Women Leadership Award winners for San Antonio.
Wow, I did not know that. And Safety and Security won a statewide award. Congratulations. And I'm gonna have to go back through my email, see if I missed that. But so just as a reminder, our next board meeting is June 15th. It's our regular board meeting. If you recall a year ago, think of where we were. In all the heavy discussions about what's our competitive financial plan moving forward. We had a lot of meetings. It was a heavy, heavy summer. And so as of now, there's no need for us to have a meeting in July. So we'll try to hold to that. But we also have a heavy agenda on the 15th. So just appreciate everybody.
I just have one suggestion for Wes. You also sent out, I think this was in the weekly newsletter, you showed based on the expected tax rate, which I know may not be the final tax rate, maybe higher or lower, we'll see, what the estimated property tax bill is for the average priced home. And that was in the Bernie Star on Saturday. What I would recommend is once all the taxing entities in our community have their tax rates and these things finalized, it would be nice to see a comparison, because we always get the blame from the average Joe out in the street, oh, the school taxes. But when you look at where the increased taxes are coming from over the past 3, 4, 5, 6 years, it's not from us. And I'm not looking to, throw anyone in the grease. That's not what this is about. But we need to be knowledgeable as trustees that, hey, the percentage of your tax bill that goes to schools continues to go down, and the percentage that goes to the county and the city continue to go up. And I just think we need to be aware of that, because we get accused of all sorts of nonsense on social media.
Absolutely agree. Is this a new logo that I'm seeing here? Oh, we're test driving. Okay.
All right, well, wonderful discussion. I'm wondering if we should tiptoe around what's happening tomorrow, Carlin, or if we should just go ahead and say congratulations. Carlin is retiring. Tomorrow's his last day. How many years again? 40 years.
But he started when he was 14.
So that means we can double you up on your committees. You're going to have a lot more time, so. I hope you have a lot of relaxation in your future. So thank you for all your service. We had great discussions tonight, wonderful presentations from Mr. Guerrero and Dr. O'Hare, Mr. Scott, Ms. Rhodes-Perrin. I think we had some great conversations amongst ourselves and had questions answered, and I think we have a lot to look forward to. I think the future is really bright at Bernie ISD. I'm so proud of what we represent, and it goes down to the little things, what we stand beside, and we want to hold ourselves accountable in all the ways, and we get to see all the great things reflected from all of our groups, and we appreciate the work that y'all do on your teams, and it makes it really easy to do what we do because we trust our teams, and to see the fiscal responsibility and the leadership. So all that to say, thank y'all for your time. It's a sacrifice to be here tonight. I think it was a great meeting, and thank y'all so much for being here. So great job.